Hello everyone and welcome to another Versus Video Deck Tech. I'm BBD joined by
CVM.
Yet again. It's
Every time.
New face every week.
It's almost like it's a series.
It almost is, but it isn't, so don't get your hopes up. Anyway, today we're going to be battling with more Fate Reforged action. The pre-release happened last weekend, and we have the official release next weekend, so I guess we are sandwiched between the pre-release and the release. I don't know what that makes us.
I don't know. But, as you're watching this,
Baloney,
Fate Reforged is legal.
Yeah, Fate Reforged is definitely legal, so you get to finally play with some of these sweet Fate Reforged cards like Timoret the Murder King.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, this deck is a Mardu aggro deck. A lot of people were really clamoring to see some of these Mardu cards, and there's only a couple new ones in here, but I think that they're both pretty awesome. And I think they could both end up being big players in Standard. So this deck is a deck that is basically based around both Brutal Horde Chief and Outpost Siege. And they both do kind of a similar thing where they turn all your crappy creatures into real threats.
Yep.
So you have like Raise the Alarm and Hordling Outbursts and Bloodsoaked Champion and all these creatures that are like pretty bad, the Goblin token from Goblin Rabblemaster, etc. And we have all these like pretty bad creatures, but they all have like really insane synergy with the rest of the deck. For one, you can use them to cast Stoke the Flames really cheap, which is something that we've seen through Standard for the last year. We can use them with Timoret to serve as like a machine gun, much like how like Mortar Pod worked with some of the old blue-black zombie decks from a couple years ago. You can just use Timoret to just throw all these tokens at your opponent, or you can attack with a Bloodsoaked Champion. When they block, you throw it at their face, replay it, throw it at their face, replay it. You know, for as much mana as you have, you can just keep repeating that process over and over again.
Yep.
And then we also have Brutal Horde Chief and Outpost Siege. Horde Chief is basically like a Hellrider type card, so, you know, maybe our opponent has a Plukernos in play, but we can play a Horde Chief and attack with the 3 Hordling Outburst tokens, and they're going to be taking 5 damage no matter what, and we get to gain 3 life. So it's just a really great way to let us attack with all these creatures even into bigger things. And if we get to untap with Brutal Horde Chief in play, we can use his ability to make blocking extremely awkward for our opponent. So a lot of cards that decks rely on to stabilize against things like this are like Elspeth or Hornet Queen, and Brutal Horde Chief kind of just invalidates those because maybe they play a Hornet Queen and then you activate the Horde Chief's ability and suddenly their Queen and all 4 insects are just...
They're blocking your Bloodsoaked Champion.
Yeah, they're really ganging up on Bloodsoaked Champion. So, yeah, probably not the best for them. Or, you know, even better, they all gang up on a Rabblemaster and you can just kill all 6 tokens or something. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do there. And then Outpost Siege is basically like Blood Artist, where whenever a token leaves play for any reason, whenever a creature leaves play for any reason, you get to deal 1 damage to a creature or player. So it's actually pretty sweet because you can use it to kill your opponent's creatures too. Blood Artist was only like gaining life and they lose life, but Outpost Siege actually lets you even clear their board a bit, which is pretty sweet. And it also has another ability too. So in situations where you don't have a lot of a board presence, you can play it, and it's basically a Chandra 0 ability every single turn.
Yeah, so it's like a Blood Artist, Chandra, split card, and you don't actually have to choose the mode until the spell resolves because it's an enter the battlefield trigger. So unlike the previous modal spells like Cryptic Command, you'd have to choose the modes when you place a spell on the stack. This one you actually don't choose until it enters the battlefield, so you can kind of play a little bit of a mind game with your opponent.
Yeah, definitely. And also things like, let's say you have a Hordling Outburst in play, and you cast Outpost Siege, and your opponent's like, in response to that, Bile Blight your tokens. You're like, all right, well now I'm going to choose the other ability.
Yeah.
So now I get to draw a card every single turn. You basically, you get to pick and choose based on how they react to it. Other than that, the deck's just a bunch of removal spells. Crackling Doom is one of the most efficient cards we've seen in a very long time. And definitely the reason to play Mardu over just, you know, if you notice this deck's almost just straight black-red. And Brutal Horde Chief's ability you actually activate with just red mana, so you don't even need white. But I just think the power of a card Crackling Doom is just too much to ignore. So that's why there is white in the deck. And Raise the Alarm is also pretty sweet with all the token generators.
Plus white also gives us access to sideboard cards like Glare of Heresy that we'll see here when we switch to the sideboard.
Absolutely.
So I think that it's worth playing it because with the tri-lands and the pain lands, it's almost a free roll. It's not 100% a free roll, but the upside is very, very good.
It is, yep. Anyway, that is the main deck for this Mardu token deck. I'm pretty excited to play with it. It looks like a lot of fun. But before we get to any battling, let's go ahead and look at the sideboard first. All right, we are back with the sideboard. To start things off, we just have 4 copies of Thoughtseize, which is going to be for like control decks or certain like grindy decks maybe that we're going to want this over something like a Lightning Strike or a Crackling Doom.
Yep. Basically
just an easy straight swap in matchups where we don't really care about that effect.
Yeah, Lightning Strike is just actually really bad against a lot of decks.
It is.
So being able to have Thoughtseize in place of it is very good. Some of the decks that are relying on like Courser of Kufix with Planeswalkers, Thoughtseize is just going to be much better than Lightning Strike.
Yeah, and it's nice that you can just make a straight swap when you want to. We have a 24th land, which is going to come in when we want to bring in some of our more expensive cards so that we have the ability to cast these cards. So one is Kolaghan the Storm's Fury, which is a new legendary dragon. And it's basically a 5/5 dragon for 5 because when it attacks, it's at least going to bump itself up to a 5/5.
Mm-hmm.
However, it also has a couple of awesome other abilities where when you have other dragons in your deck too, you can actually like double up on his trigger, which is pretty sweet with maybe things like Stormbreath Dragon. I can definitely see a Stormbreath Kolaghan deck being good.
Mm-hmm.
And he also has the dash ability too, which is really awesome against like sweeper effects. So maybe you Thoughtseize your opponent and they've got 2 Crux of Fates, and you're just like, well, I'm just going to dash this guy over and over again until you die. So he's either like a lava axe that keeps going back to your hand every turn, or he's a dragon that can pump the rest of your team and get crazy with other dragons as well.
I got to play with Kolaghan in the pre-release, and I was really impressed with him, primarily for his dash ability. So I never found that I just wanted to put him in play and expose him to some removal. Most of the time, I would just dash him, get the trigger on 3 or 4 other of my creatures, and including himself, and you can just get in a lot of damage very quickly. You could very easily just go like Outburst into the 3/3 for 4
Brutal Horde Chief,
and then just dash Kolaghan the next turn and kill your opponent.
Yeah.
It's
They're
pretty
just
crazy.
like Courser Krufix go. You're like, well, you're dead.
Yeah.
Have fun with that game.
It's just a lot of damage.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point, and that is something awesome about Kolaghan is he actually represents a lot of surprise damage, where your opponent's at like 11 life, and all of a sudden they're just dead because not only is he hitting them for 5, but your other guys are hitting them for more too.
Like with just this and Erase the Alarm, you can 9 your opponent, having no permanents in play at the when they take their turn.
End a turn and raise, untap Kolaghan, you're dead.
That's pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy, actually. I think that this card hasn't actually gotten that much hype, but just even like based on this discussion here, I feel like it could end up just being a giant player, almost like Thundermaw Hellkite was in Standard.
Very good.
It is legendary though, which is one drawback, but it is still sweet. A couple of Chandras as well for some of the control matchups, or there are a lot of matchups where your opponent's going to have a lot of X1s, or your opponent's going to have like one big creature. And Chandra really helps like push through big creatures. So I like it both in matchups where your opponent's like really slow with rhinos, or your opponent has a bunch of X1s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a pretty versatile card for that reason. Chandra's pretty sweet. A couple of removal spells. We only have 8 mounts in the deck, so I didn't want to overload on chains. Instead, I have a couple of Murderous Cuts as well. We're not really using our graveyard. We have fetch lands and Thoughtseizes and cheap removal spells.
And token makers.
And token makers, yeah. So we have a lot of ways to fill our graveyard. Murderous Cut actually potentially could even be main deck because we're really filling our graveyard and not using it. So, but I do like it against like Rhino decks and things like that, where it's like they're going to be playing some big guys that, maybe Brutal Horde Chief can't attack through. And that's where we want some Murderous Cut action. And then Glare is probably just one of the best sideboard cards in Standard because of the power level of like Jeskai Ascendancy and some of the new cards like Mentor, Monastery Mentor, and the Soulfire Grandmaster, things like that. So
on top of that, like the best cards from the previous format being Siege Rhino, Jeskai Ascendancy, and towards the end we're even seeing more Elspeths being played. Like Glare of Heresy is just awesome.
Even some Soul of Theros were being played.
Yeah, that's true.
Glare's a great answer to that guy. So
ugh.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the Mardu token deck. I think it looks pretty awesome, and I'm excited to battle with it. Hopefully you guys will stick around to watch that.